All right, guys, it's time for the Next Level Guy Show, a men's interview, interest, and improvement-focused podcast featuring interviews with the greats from all industries to help you better your life. Each week, a new episode features an interview with one of the greats, covering all aspects of their story, from life hacks to tips and protocols that have allowed them to live life on the next level. We then highlight concrete action steps that you can use to improve your life. And now, your host, Ian Dawson McKay.
And today's guest is Michael Sartain. Michael's a performance coach, former Air Force Navigator, instructor and host. His Men of Action program has propelled 400 plus men to new heights in their life in under 25 days. His podcast, The Michael Sartain Show, is a much-loved show of discussions on topics such as dating, status, connection, networking and more, with a range of opinions and fiery debates. Michael graduated from the University of Texas at the end of the .com bubble. The lack of jobs led him to be a DJ and later a manager at a gentleman's club. He joined the military after the tragedy of 9/11, becoming a navigator in the United States Air Force, winning awards and medals for his service. In 2011, Michael left the Air Force and moved to Las Vegas, becoming an event host and eventually a self-help coach. Michael hosts pageants, swimsuit competitions and network events in Vegas, and is the MC and recruiter for some extremely large parties and charity events in Los Angeles. In 2019, Michael created the Men of Action program. The program was a culmination of all the lessons and many more he's learned over his life and through his podcast. The Men of Action program focuses on 5 pillars: social networking, leadership, entrepreneurship, mindset and finance to make you a well-rounded man with an abundant lifestyle. In this interview, we discuss becoming a man of action, networking, and how you can change your story to change your life. And now, let's get to the interview. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an absolute pleasure. I've followed your podcast for a while now, but you have such a unique job description. How do you explain to people what you do?
It's really funny. Every time I get this question a lot, like, what do I do? So I would say now the easy answer is I'm a performance coach, which is different from being like a life coach or a therapist. I understand that my clients have a burden of performance. When they come to me, it's not one of these things where I just have to make them feel better. They have to feel better, but also something must be produced. There must be some action taken. And that action could be that they're improving their communication skills, their networking skills, getting better at their job, getting better at leadership. Or a lot of guys come to me to get better with their dating life. A lot of guys, I have a significant number of guys that have come to me maybe after a divorce and they've been out of the dating scene for a long time. And then they look at Instagram and dating apps, and it doesn't make sense to them. A lot of times they don't get it. It's my job to help you get it. So if you were going to say, probably the top description is that I'm a dating coach. I still work part-time as a quantitative analyst for a fund. And then I have 3 different podcasts that I do. One of the podcasts we're going to turn into a webinar. Just a monthly webinar, but I have the live stream I do on Mondays. I have the Michael Sartain podcast, and then I have Access Vegas that I do. We try to do every Thursday that Rolo and I are both in Las Vegas. And then it's a panel show, much like Whatever or Fresh and Fit, but it's just Las Vegas girls. And we try to keep it a little bit more scientific. I am obsessed with 2 topics in particular, and that's evolutionary psychology and astrophysics. Those are like my 2 biggest hobbies in my life. Unfortunately, not a lot of people want me to teach astrophysics, so I teach evolutionary psychology principles, and then I relate that to dating, intersexual dynamics, like I said, leadership, prestige, social status, communication, networking, those type of skills. I take, what were our evolutionary roots? Why is it that men who, have more alignments throughout history, Dr. David Buss, who I quote probably more than anyone, he talks about the concepts that men who had more alignments growing, more social alignments, had more access to resources throughout history and more access to, sexual partners throughout history. The ones who had the best alignments had those things. The people that were closest to the top, those were the individuals who had the most resources that they were granted throughout history. And we still see that same thing today. You guys have probably noticed at some point in your life, you getting picked over for a job or a promotion or for a date, but it wasn't because of how, it wasn't a meritocracy. It wasn't because of how good you were. You got picked over because somebody knew someone, right? Because someone was friends with someone else. And that language of networking, that evolutionary language of networking is something that I teach.
Because you talk a lot about like the status of a person, that sort of makes them attractive. Do you think that's a problem in today's society? Is that we all are now going towards the easy route? We simp for the OnlyFans girl. We want to become famous and rich by doing the next viral video rather than creating a sustainable business or something. Have we become the generation no great war, no real struggles? So we've forgotten how to be just men?
So I like to look at things as, are they efficient or inefficient? And then do they work or not work? I've tried to, the way I coach is nothing to me is right or wrong or good or bad. It's like, does it work or not work? For instance, having a society where murder was legal, that doesn't work because all of a sudden no one trusts anyone. And now your system of economics breaks down. And all of a sudden things become very inefficient. So that's the reason why when people are like, well, why is murder illegal? It's because it's bad. No, it's not. It's actually illegal because then society breaks down. That's the actual answer. And so I look at it the same kind of situation. Does society work if a lot of men are watching OnlyFans and a lot of women have delusional beliefs about their attractiveness towards the opposite sex because of how many matches they get on dating apps? Society sort of works. The reality is there's 8 billion people on the planet. And so if a lot of dudes are simping for women, is it bad or good? It's inefficient. Here's the thing: when you say whether or not it's good or bad, if you're one of the people who's becoming aware of the situation that you're in, if you're one of the people who's becoming aware and say, hey, I'm a little bit overweight. Hey, I pay a lot of money to these girls on OnlyFans. Hey, every time I meet a woman, I start putting on this like pickup persona or this suave Casanova persona that actually pushes away a lot more women than it connects me with. If you come to the realization that in your job, whenever you're talking to somebody else, you're talking shit about your other employees behind their back instead of having direct conversation to their face. In those cases, what I'm going to tell you is your life doesn't work. Your life is inefficient. Your life is based on stories that you tell yourself to be a victim. And if you want to get out of that, you can have a more efficient life that works better for you and then makes you happy. You can definitely do that. But as society in general, we're always going to move further and further away from the survival scenario. So like when I say that, like living in the Pleistocene era, which is more than like maybe 12,000 years ago, in that era, when there's no real technology like we consider now. We may have the wheel and fire, but that's about it. Maybe some spears. At that point, we have hunter-gatherer societies. Everything that all the proclivities that you would have aided in survival at some point. Meaning, like you don't wake up and go hunt the gazelle and just have like an existential crisis about a meme that you posted, or whether or not you look cute today when you come back and see Sally. All you care about is procuring the protein and bringing it back to the tribe. What your only points were survival. The only thing that mattered was survival. Like depression, I'm not saying depression never happened. I'm sure it did. But what I'm saying is you, during that time period, because every day was a struggle to live, you didn't have time to sit there and have these ingratitudes that you have now. Now we live in a time period, just consider Henry VIII dying of gout, I believe in the 15th century. He dies of gout. So the wealthiest man probably on earth, certainly in Europe, the wealthiest man dies of a disease that a homeless person could get cured today. You have no idea how good you have it right now. You consider all those soldiers, pre-1949, they'd get shot in the leg or cut, and they'd have to have a limb removed immediately because we didn't have antibiotics like in this country, in the United States until 1937. When you consider the fact that, like, are you in Edinburgh right now? Are you in Scotland somewhere?
Glasgow.
So like for me to fly to Glasgow, like if I had to fly to Glasgow tomorrow, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I would just book an airline on this little phone I have and just push some buttons. And then all of a sudden a big fucking tube, like a 180,000 pound tube I'd get into it and it would just take me to Glasgow. And it wouldn't even cost me like half my life savings. It would just be like, it would just be some money that I made. Like it's when you consider the likelihood, like someone who lived in Glasgow 500 years ago, they're going to make one trip to the US and then that's it. They're not going back. Like that's it, for their whole life. And when you consider the idea that before 1850, half of the Earth's population died before the age of 5. Right now, half the Earth's population lives on less than $5 a day. when you have those realizations and you understand how grateful you should be for the world that you live in. But while you're living in that world, bro, you become so fucking soft. Man, what? Oh God, is the air conditioner? Oh, the air conditioner's up to 79. Oh, what is this? Like, oh my God, I can't believe I had to wait in line at the store today to go buy some item that I'm getting incredibly cheaply that didn't even exist 100 years ago. Like, all we do is complain. And so as we complain, what happens? We have less gratitude. And then biologically, what happens? Our bodies produce less testosterone. Our bodies produce less testosterone. We start losing several masculine features because we're drinking our frappe lattes from Starbucks. Those lattes, the excessive amount of fat is causing our bodies to produce more estrogen. The things that we eat are causing us to like not live as that hunter-gatherer, very efficient, compact man who probably had a very low body fat percentage. That we're getting further and further away from that survival scenario. I guarantee you right now, like for instance, the conversations that we have about gender, which whatever you believe is fine. But my point is we wouldn't have that conversation 200 years from now. The idea that like when we lived in an agrarian society where men had to like, till the soil, the idea that women were like, we want equal rights. I'm like, well, even if we wanted to give them to you, we can't because you can't do the physical labor that we can do. If the zombies showed up today, we would go very much back into gender roles. But as we get further and further away from a survival scenario, it allows us the privilege of moving away from those gender roles. One of my favorite comments was Mia Khalifa, the former porn star. She said, what I did is not as bad as joining the army. Because when you join the army, you give your body to the government. And I was like, I didn't join the military for you. I joined the military for me. But the problem is when you consider there are men in the military who are violent, who are willing to carve out this cubby hole for her to feel safe to say stupid shit like that. And she doesn't have gratitude for that fact. Instead, she just takes it for granted and then continues to like say whatever she wants, which by the way, she has the right to do so. But she says things that are ignorant and she doesn't recognize they're ignorant because she has a complete and total lack of gratitude. She says that, she makes a bunch of money on OnlyFans using her old porn name while at the same time saying porn should be illegal. Like the fact that she even has the ability to be that hypocritical, why is that? It's because other violent men came before her to carve out this space where she could be free, where she could be protected by a First Amendment. Make sense?
No, I mean we have this amazing opportunities in life now. We are so open with so many opportunities and capabilities that we can do that would have killed our grandparents, our great-grandparents. And I think we just don't take advantage of that. So why do you think so many guys are sitting there living the finite lifestyle? I was trying to think of a nicer way of putting it, but just that, they just want to go to the job, come home, sit on the bus, watch porn, go home unhappy. Why are we getting to that? Because I come to think who said it, but you have to get to the point where the pain of changing is
Yes.
not as bad as the pain of where you currently are.
Yes.
Why have we got this generation now where guys are just like, yeah, it's good enough. Yeah, it pays the bills. Yeah, I'm enjoying where I am now. Why are we not looking for that journey, that mission in our lives?
So I'm going to use a sports analogy. So, in the EPL, teams that there's no salary. You guys don't have a salary cap in your English Premier League. You can just pay players more. So like Man City can just keep playing more money than like say Leicester City or whatever. In the United States, our franchises in basketball and football, they have what's called a salary cap. And whenever you are the best team in the league, you pick last in the draft. And whenever you're the worst team in the league, you pick first in the draft. So a lot of times the teams at the bottom, they get really good players on their team. And then eventually they become the best teams. You'll notice in our sports leagues, we have different champions all the time. Teams that haven't won, like every team almost has won at least one championship. The reason why I bring that up is because there's teams in there that get stuck in the middle. They haven't gotten good enough or they haven't suffered enough. Okay. That's the actual answer. The reason why these men aren't going down to the bottom and really making a change in their life, getting that first pick in the draft, is because they haven't suffered enough. And so how do you keep from suffering enough? Porn is a way to just sort of like paste over the fact that you're alone, right? Being able to eat unlimited amounts of sugar, salt, and fat is a way to paste over your hunger and just like make you feel good, giving you just enough of a dopamine spike when you eat that cheeseburger to just like make up for the fact that you don't look the way you want to look. Like those kind of things are the reasons why. Meaning like It was a good friend of mine named Owen Cook, RSD Tyler from Real Social
Oh yeah.
Dynamics. He told me one time, Owen, he had one speech, I'll never forget it. He goes, beta males still get to eat. Like beta males will get to fuck like one or two girls. Beta males still make enough money to like have a roof over their head. Like it's like even when you talk about like wolves or gorillas, beta males still get to eat. Like being a beta male is bad, but it's not so bad you're going to take your own life. And so that's the reason why. It's the guys who get to the bottom. Like for me, it was losing my father and having my girlfriend break up with me within like a 6-week period, and they get kicked, then getting sent to the Middle East. That at that point, I was like, I've suffered enough. And so I made a decision to change. So the answer to your question is, we've created a world that has so many diversions. You can divert like through porn, video games, movies, radio, television, film. You can, and also the ability to get prescription drugs. People abusing prescription drugs. I know some people have like legitimate like ketamine therapy or they're prescribed Xanax, but people abuse those things too. And your ability to sedate yourself. There's never been more of an ability to sedate yourself if you're a young man. And so because of that, no matter how bad things are, you never really feel how bad they are. You never hit rock bottom. It's never so bad, and you never suffer enough that you actually make the change. So that's probably the reason why. We just live in such a comfortable environment. Whereas those guys that you're talking about, had they lived in a Pleistocene period, what they would have done is their lack of motivation would have caused them to not be able to eat, to cause them to be cast out of the tribe. When they talk to these Inuit tribes, these ancestral tribes, even today, they ask the men in the tribes, are like, why is it that you're going to war? Why is it that you're willing to conduct violence? And the answer is always the same answer: because I want a wife. They know that if they go and they show themselves to be worthy men who are in battle, that they get a wife. In the United States, we don't do that. We go to war because we love our country. But like back in these ancestral tribes, that's why they did it. That necessity, like I have to go work and kill and protect and provision and build in order to get a wife. We've completely lost that motivation. And I'm not even saying it's a good thing or a bad thing. What I'm telling you is that's why men were different back then. They knew I needed to have a productive farm in order for me to be worthy of having a woman to stay there and for me to provide for her. And then we have lots of children. You consider, I mean, this is the same thing in an agrarian society when you were growing up is when I was, is the concept of like men having several children, right? Like families were huge back then. You started to see couples, they would have 14, 15 kids. And why would they have that? They would have all those kids because of the fact that they needed more people they need more physical labor on the farm. So we live in a very different time now where people are having their first child at 29, 30 years old. That is very, very different.
And do you think that's then when people start coming to see you is when they have their own pain point, when it actually tips that scale, that when they get divorced, when they lose their job? Because to be honest, I'm a bit like that just now. I've just taken sort of severance from my current job finishing in a few months. Broke up with my ex-girlfriend, and I'm feeling that urge, that push to kind of go out and do more. I want to take this show and do far more with it and help people and change. And I was thinking, but what? And I was speaking to friends, and they were like, oh, I just watch TV most nights. And I couldn't imagine that. But now I know that I've put in like over 200 interviews. And I'm still feeling like I'm just touching the surface. What do you see guys coming to you? Is it when they come with that divorce, when they've been cheated on, when they've lost like a family member? What is that pain point, and how do you start working with a client at that point?
Well, you have to think about what is the thing that all of us have in common, and everyone you've ever met has in common, is that we are the result of an unchained broken of reproduction. Like we are the result. So what is it? It's like your parents successfully replicated their grandparents, great-grandparents, going all the way back until that you get to the point to where like we aren't even humans anymore. We're talking like Australopithecus at that point. So when you consider that, what is the thing that every one of our ancestors did successfully? They met a mate, and then they had sex with that mate, and then they produced children. So when you think about what our proclivities would be as Homo sapiens, it would be everything we do, our haircut, the way we talk, how we live, the comfortability of our life would be in service of that one idea, right? What was the original question?
Well, it's how most people come to you after a big event in their life,
Yeah,
like
the
a
pain
life
point.
event.
Yeah, the pain point. Sorry. So if you would consider that, since all our proclivities are based around that idea of replication, then the biggest pain points we would ever feel are a lack of that replication or something that disturbs that replication. So a girl breaking up with you, if you were talking about like for a man, what are the strongest feelings a man feels? Male jealousy is one of the strongest feelings. And how do we know? Because it's one of the leading causes of murder. It's one of the leading causes of homicide throughout history, is men being jealous of other men, or men trying to take land, resources, and fertile other women from other countries. Genghis Khan being an example. Something like 1.5% of all Asian men have Genghis Khan's Y chromosome right now. At one point, I believe Genghis Khan had killed 10% of the human population, some crazy number like that. And so when you consider that concept, that's the reason why. So what are the things that can get men to hit rock bottom? Well, if you were to look, there's a certain demographic of men that is 8 times more likely to take their own life. And that is men over the age of, I believe, 40 or 50. I believe it might be 40, that have been divorced and then lost everything financially. So you lost everything financially because you lost your job, whatever. Your wife divorces you. At that point, also, maybe you don't get to see your kids as often. Those men are the single highest cohort of individuals that may take their own life. So if you want to ask what's the most common rock bottom, that's the one. I was in a relationship, things were good, I had financial troubles, and then all of a sudden, my wife left me. That's it. And then, of course, in the United States, like if you have a skill set, you can get out of those financial troubles. If you have something to offer the workforce, especially some of these guys, they're smart men. They get back on their feet, but their wife's already left them, and they have trouble getting to see their kids. They're back on their feet. They have their money problem solved. And when they get to that situation, it's like they still feel really horrible because the life that they wanted, the real thing that they wanted, is not there for them anymore. Their wife is left, and then they don't get the chance to see their kids. So infidelity, I would say infidelity, and then also just like divorce are 2 of the things that get guys to rock bottom. There are a few other things. One of the things is a lot of times guys are just heavily motivated. So I get a lot of young guys that come to the course, and they only get like 50, 60, 70, 80% of what they want from the opposite sex. So I know a lot of guys are like, oh, I do really good on dating apps, but I'm not attracted to any of these women. So stuff like that. I get a lot of dudes that have that. And then the other one, this is a really big one for me, is that guys that feel left out. So they're like, I know that I get passed over for promotions, or I'm not a really good salesperson. I don't get invited to the best parties. I know that there's, this guy who's a CEO who invites his closest friends on a yacht, and I never get invited. An example is like I go to pretty much every weekend. I go to Dan Bilzerian's house to play paintball. When I'm there, some of the guys there are either like MMA champions or guys that are worth $100 million. Like everybody, I was playing paintball with Steve Aoki the other day. When you're there, everyone there has accomplished something pretty amazing, and you're like, well, how do I get invited to those type of situations? Those guys are probably they're not the majority of my clients, but when we get one of those guys on the phone and talk to them, they're most likely out of any other type of client to join the program. Meaning guys who want to improve their networking skills or get better with, networking with really high status men. The most common though is guys who are having trouble with women. They're the ones who come to me the most because, again, when you consider what's the strongest pain point you're going to feel as a man, the strongest pain point you're going to feel is the rejection of women. It is, and regardless of like how much you get used to it. Even Dan Bilzerian in his book, this guy had been with 2,000 women, and he talks about 2 or 3, or there's like 4 women in there. He talks about that broke his heart. And so, like, how is that possible if you have that much validation for women? It's like, well, because it's a very, very evolved, deep, evolutionary adaptation that we have as men to want validation from the opposite sex. So that's a lot of times where the main pain point comes from.
It definitely makes a lot of sense because if you said to me, what's holding you back? What's stopping you becoming the next level of where I want to be? I would go, I would stutter my way through some bullshit answer. But if you said, tell me about the girlfriend you broke up with or your first love,
yes,
I could give you every single detail and it'd be like a knife down the back. Why, when we're starting to make that change, how do you work with somebody to get them to actually understand the limiting blocks that are actually holding them back? Because I'm assuming you don't break down jealousy, comparison. You actually deal with changing the person as a whole.
Yeah.
If you know how they say, like, what gets measured gets managed.
Yeah.
How do you even get them to start to understand what's holding them back before they even start looking at fixing it?
So I have a pretty big advantage there. When I first started the program, the main thing that I would use was me. I would say, well, this is an example of something, because I'd had a lot of clients, but the best example of someone who wasn't getting what they wanted and was able to fix it was me. So I was always using myself as an example. Now, because I've had 1,600 guys through the course, whenever I have, like, say, an Indian guy who's short, who says, oh, this won't work for me because I like white women and they don't like Indian guys, I show him 12 Indian guys that are in the course that are short, that are all doing really well with white women. And then I ask the guy the question, I say, what is the story that he's not telling himself that you're telling yourself right now? Yeah. He's having success and he's in the same situation. So again, initially I only had myself as an example. And now, because I have 1,600 clients, if you go on moamentoring.com and you sign up for a demo, we'll actually show you 200 video testimonials of guys who've taken my course and then had incredible success with it. So whatever it is, whatever the trope is, it's the guy who, like, I can't make money because the world's against me. I'm really bad at speaking. Hey, Michael, what do? I'm an introvert. Hey, Michael, I'm an African-American guy and I only want to date white women. Hey, Michael, whatever the thing is, there's all kinds of tropes. Hey, Michael, I'm overweight. Hey, Michael, I'm too old. Too old is a big one. That one's crazy to me. I just can't even. Let me tell you something, guys. I have never had more women like come after me than when I turned 46. Never. And when I'm 55, I'll probably even have even more. And I know there's these guys, and these blue pill guys are like, that's not true. It's like, if you stay in shape and you stay at the peak of your game, and probably I would recommend testosterone replacement therapy. If you do that, you will never be more attractive in your life than when you're a fully functioning, like well-placed, competent, fit man who has a little bit of gray hair. Women go fucking nuts for that. It is absolutely true. Look at Clooney, look at Brad Pitt, look at The Rock. Over 50, women still find them attractive. Now, women don't find most men over 50 attractive because most men over 50 are obese. So that's the reason why. So it's just one of those situations where you have to, you look at that and then you say, okay, this is where I can improve, and this is the kind of improvements that I can expect. But the way I get them out of their head is I show them multiple examples of people who have succeeded, who are in exactly their situation. And I ask them this question: what is the story he's not telling himself that you're telling yourself? And then all of a sudden they can go inside themselves and be like, okay, there is a story I'm telling themselves. Getting people to recognize that they tell themselves stories and those stories dictate their behavior is really hard to do when those people have a big ego. But if you have ever met like a delusional guy, like a guy who's delusionally confident with women, he gets women he's not supposed to get. And a guy who's delusionally confident with sales, he ends up pulling off sales that he shouldn't be able to pull off, because he's telling himself the story that he's better at sales or better with women than he actually is. And then the results follow. So it's one of these crazy things as human beings. You guys can look up the placebo effect if you want to, that in psychology, but it's like, if you continually tell yourself these stories, now you can do so to the point where like you can hurt yourself, right? I'm telling myself I'm a cardiologist and I try to do heart surgery on someone, then I end up killing them, right? Because I don't have the competency and the experience to do this thing that I believe I have the intelligence to do. But there's also Dunning-Kruger effect, where you have like a little bit of knowledge in a certain area, so you think it makes you an expert in that area. Like Mark Cuban talking about finance is a great example. Mark Cuban he says things that are like woefully incorrect, but because he's a billionaire, he thinks that he can do that, or he thinks he can run a basketball team. And I'm a Mavericks fan, so that's the reason why I'm saying that. Those type of situations, those things happen, and then you can like learn to overcome them. But the story you tell yourself, that's the most important thing.
Because it harks back to like when I interviewed Brent Smith. I can't remember how he describes himself, a lifestyle coach maybe. And I remember him saying that, and that was the first time somebody had ever said, you can change your story at any point. You just tell yourself it's a different story, and you can stop all the programming. And I remember thinking, that's just garbage, and I could feel myself fighting against it, because it then made me realize I can make the difference. It's not things holding me back, it's me holding myself back. And do you think that's the beauty of things like pickup and all the change in male self-improvement over the last 20 years has been that pickup introduced guys to becoming the prize, taking girls off the pedestal, making them realize they were better, they could be better?
I think male improvement did that. I don't know that pickup did that. I think one of the problems that I've had with pickup in general is that because there's so much, even it was actually Owen who said this. He goes, think about the term itself, pickup. That means I'm going to go try to get something that I don't have. Men coming from a place of lack. I actually do think I think really good pickup instructors did really good jobs, but pickup in general as a whole actually hurt men because it caused men to like believe this more aggressive style of direct game with women was something that was better instead of understanding how to manufacture attraction. And because pickup, especially in the early days, was totally devoid of any kind of social circle understanding. And for the longest time, they had no concept of how social media worked. You'll notice like pickup coaches now are teaching guys how to like take pictures for their Instagram. They're like 15 years too late. I think in those cases, I think not pedestalizing women was something that came more from like the male self-improvement space, more maybe from the manosphere than from pickup specifically. I think what pickup did do is that it helped a lot of guys who were stuck in the house get out and get over their approach anxiety. That is one thing pickup absolutely did do. But I think the strategies afterwards were just like more along the lines of either I need to be very direct with women, which, you know, this is something a lot of people don't understand. Women don't sleep with you because of your intent. Pickup guys were like showing intent to women. Women don't sleep with you because of your intent. They sleep with you because of your status. And so understanding how status hierarchies work, that was a function of social circle game, which was something that came along much later. And I think it's more of like a software update to pickup. Pickup worked really well back from like, say, 2001 to 2010. I think pickup worked fantastically well. But once 2011 happened and Instagram came out, then people were able to show massive amounts of status with low perceived effort. What happened was there was the entire dating market tilted toward this small group of men that were able to show all this status. I mean, Dan Bilzerian being probably the biggest example back in 2012. When that started happening, then pickup started working less. Also, women stopped going out as much. You'll notice like the most beautiful women don't go to clubs nearly to the level that they did 20 years ago because they can get all their validation through Instagram and OnlyFans. So, and again, I just feel like, you know, this is something, it's a software update. The world had a software update. It was called social media. And I teach the software update. I try to give the guys the update. If you've been married since before 2011 and you come out and you start to realize that I need to know what these memes mean, and I need to have like a Instagram that shows that I'm relevant, competent, have access to scarce resources, and have high status. If I didn't know that because I've been married this whole time, then when you get back out into the dating world, things have changed so fast. And by the way, they're going to continue to change very fast as well, and it's something that you have to keep up with.
Because I mean, I did a bit of RSD when I was younger, saw some results, but I was shy at doing the pickup line because it was never congruent with who I was. But when I realised the bits about becoming a better person and suddenly becoming more just out there myself, suddenly I was like, oh. And now lately I've become this version of myself that I don't know who I am anymore. And I think that's what a lot of guys are. They crumble when they're confronted. You know, they struggle when anybody kind of challenges them, or they get a girlfriend, they feel a bit more kind of, they become the beta. They kind of just, they follow her because somebody shows me a bit of passion. They think, oh, well, I'm going to stay here. It's safer. It's warm. It's the warm spot. How do you get guys to start standing up for them to follow their true beliefs and not just that kind of, well, it'll do. It's comfortable.
I like the book Crucial Conversations, and then I like the book Start With Why. I think when you come to the realization, like, you get for what you ask. So what happens with most people is they grow up in societies, or they grow up in a culture where, maybe their religion teaches them this, or their parenting teaches them this. A lot of my German clients have this problem. They're afraid to be rude, and their inability to be rude, what they do is they hold things in and they don't have direct conversations with people. And as doing so, like we like to say in MOA, when you avoid confrontation, you create conflict. When you avoid confrontation, you create conflict. So you're a boss and you don't give clear instructions to your employees. Hey, this is what I need to do. This is what the standard is. You don't do it. And then they don't meet the standard. And then after a while, like, things build and build and build. And then you have to fire them. And then when you fire your employee is like, I don't understand. What did I do wrong? And in your mind, you're like, well, he should have just known, but I didn't want to have this uncomfortable conversation with my employee. So I let this thing fester. And that's what happens. When you avoid confrontation, you create conflict. It's the same thing with your girlfriend. If she does things where, like, you're out and public together, and then she consistently either picks a fight with you in public, or it's a situation where she disrespects you in front of your friends. If you don't have that conversation with her earlier, being like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, we can't do that in public anymore. If you want to do that with me again, I'm going to have to find someone else. If you don't have that conversation early, and she also doesn't believe that you can find anyone else because you're so desperate for her, then she's going to continue to walk all over you. So it's things like that where you have to maintain a boundary, even though it's scary in the beginning. You're like, oh, I don't want to hurt other people's feelings. When you tell little white lies because you don't want to hurt other people's feelings, you're just a liar. You don't tell. You're not being courageous. You're not noble for avoiding confrontation. You're just a liar. So being able to have direct conversations with people, and this is something that I think we've done really well in my company, is that the three of us, the three partners, when one of us does something wrong, the other two are not afraid to, sit there and give them the criticism. And so that's been really helpful. Having those conversations, you're going to get a more productive life. Sitting down with your partner, sitting down with your coworkers and saying, these are the expectations I have. And if we can't meet these expectations, I love you guys. It's nothing personal, but I'm going to find another job or I'm going to find another partner. And when you do that, it's really crazy what happens, because instead of them feeling like you're manipulating them, they feel like for the first time, they're like, I have clear direction. I understand the direction that I need to go. And it makes things way easier when you have that.
Because that's what I was really impressed with, was in your ethos, you talked about having a clear, concise voice and having those difficult discussions that, that you were ready to stand up for what you believed in. I mean, there was times in the podcast that I didn't always, agree with certain things, but you could see, that you were coming and saying exactly what you felt, what you agreed with. And then I started thinking, is that my ego talking, or is that myself? Is that, is what he's saying is true, and I just don't like it because it challenges a belief I held? And that's what I liked about your podcast, was that it actually gets you to think outside by having these different voices in the different areas. It opens it up into more of a thought-provoking conversation rather than an echo chamber that some of the other podcasts that I've listened to recently. But when you've got somebody, are you teaching them to start working on themselves, or becoming and transforming their social circle? Or does opening in social and becoming the local celebrity, does that kind of create and resolve the problems that a lot of these guys are holding on to?
So you can't really have a great social circle without working on yourself. One of the great gifts we have as men is that the things that we do as men, competing with each other, becoming gaining more information so that we can become more competent and more skilled. We do these things so that we can become more useful to other people, because we can make more money. And in the end, why are we doing this? We're doing this because we want acceptance from the opposite sex. So in our quest as men, in our journey as men, in order to try to, be more, to gain higher sexual status, in our quest to do that, we become better people. Now, not often, not always. Sometimes you'll have guys they'll become narcissists and they'll become abusive, and they'll do that in order to gain sexual status. But most of us, we're like, we want to work hard and become useful. We want to become protectors, provisioners, providers for our partner. And in order to do that, we become better human beings. So now in social circle, this is a great example where it's like, I need to become a better communicator. I need to look better on camera. I need to have pauses in between my words. I need to stop mumbling and using so many verbal crutches to become a better speaker. I want to be a better conversationalist. So I read more books, and now I have infinite things to have discussions on. I become a better listener, and I learn how to get people to open up to me, personally as an interviewer. And then whenever I have a problem, I develop problem solving skills. For me, it's like, I'm going to read several books, maybe take a course on it, maybe watch several YouTube videos and find other like-minded people who've had similar problems that they've overcome. And then I'm going to become a problem solver that way. Sounds to me like in building my life in total, and including also my diet and exercise, in building my life in total, I've become someone that other people want to network with. And by doing that, I become better at social circle. And by getting better at social circle, I become more attractive to the opposite sex. So me improving myself makes me more attractive to the opposite sex. So when you say, do you worry about becoming more attractive to the opposite sex or improving yourself? The answer is, you have to improve yourself. In a social circle context, you have to improve yourself in order to become attractive to the opposite sex. So they're not mutually exclusive.
So what sort of challenges would you have a person who's coming? Would you want them just to be reading more, to be, to doing some, I think Carl Jung used to call it the shadow work? Are you getting them to kind of challenge the stories through journaling? How do you start working with somebody to start making that initial change to breaking that blocks down?
Yeah, so I have my course is it's several dozen modules. I have them go through the course, and then I have one-on-one calls with other guys that are not one-on-one calls, group calls that we do every Tuesday at 4 p.m. PST, where we have hundreds of other guys that are going through the same journey, and they can draw information and inspiration from one another. Then I have a book list. It's about 30 books that I recommend the guys read. There's a group of 6 podcast interviews that I've done that are required that I want all of them to watch, including me interviewing Dr. David Buss, the evolutionary psychologist. And then we have these infield almost boot camps here where we teach how to get the best out of life. So there's like, we have schoolwork, we have social media work where we go to different locations and take pictures to fix your social media. And then we have the guys going out and doing cold approach, but not cold approach like pickup, cold approach to build a social circle. And so we teach those things. Those are called Vegas immersions. And then we also have networking coaches that help you. So in the course, when you ask, like, how do I do it? I don't, like, the shadow work is definitely something we discuss, talking about thinking. We definitely have that discussion. But for me, it's more like, what story are you telling yourself? That's what we go down. We break down the stories that people are telling themselves. We explain, like I explained to them, who's the most popular person in the world today? Let's just say you think it's, The Rock or not Lionel Messi or whoever you think it is, whoever the most important, the most famous person in the world is. Then ask yourself the question, how did The Rock affect your life today? And you'd be like, well, he didn't. And then you look back and you say, well, you're not that famous. You're not as famous as The Rock. So how did you affect anyone else's life? And you're like, oh, I didn't. And it's like, okay, well then stop worrying about what other people think about you. Stop telling yourself these things and giving yourself these limiting beliefs, because most people have limiting beliefs because they're way too concerned about what other people think about them. But if you realized how little other people think about you at all, it would be so gratifying and so liberating that it would force you to take action.
And so you're a fan of gratitude and journaling? Because I found that once I stopped, when I literally took up my phone and every day would write out 3 things I was grateful for in my life, not just food and water, but actually the bus is empty, or my car started quickly after de-icing, or whatever it was, you start noticing the positives in your life. And I think we get so used to hearing negative and we bitch and we moan that a lot of guys are just like, oh, everything's going against me and it's everybody else's fault. But when you actually start seeing we have got a lot of great stuff in our life. And I do like the concept you talk about where success leaves clues. How can we start using that to see the guys that have done these amazing things? Because there was that graphic, the AHA graphic, where it was about guys like the guy who invented IKEA because he couldn't get a table in his car. So he decided to build flat pack. There was a guy that made ramen noodles, but became a billionaire because he realized that there was not a quick meal he could make when he was hungry to get to work. So there's all these guys doing these things at such later in life, changing the world. They did it. But how can we start seeing the success that others use and understanding it and using it in our own lives?
So we'll just talk first off when it comes to business in general. In business in general, this is one of the easier ones to look at because there's so many people who've made a lot of money and they've either been interviewed by someone or they are biographies about them or they're a case study in someone else's books. If you want to get really good at sales, for instance, you can listen to Jordan Belfort, you can listen to Russell Brunson, you can listen to Alex Hormozi, you can listen to Jeremy Miner, you can listen to Cole Gordon. There's so many people that you can go to for advice there. And what you'll see is when you start listening to them, you're going to hear a lot of the things they say are the same. Remember, I said success leaves clues. Successful people, what you'll find is that while there are different ways of being successful, a lot of times the most successful people, you're going to see a lot of things in common. They're going to have an abundance mentality. They're generally not going to be hyper jealous people. They're going to be people trying to maybe, like, for instance, I love paying my employees. I've noticed that successful people, when they have employees, they like to pay their employees. Because when they pay their employees, especially their employees that work on commission, they're improving their lives. Those people stay. They don't have a lot of turnover, and which helps the job. It helps the company. It helps the firm. So for us, I love the fact that I am paying my employees so much because, and this is just something that I've seen from working with other people that are very successful. The understanding the concept of scalability. There's a great book on this called Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell. And it goes over the concept like you hire people to give you back your time. not people to help you scale. When you hire people to buy back your time, you become more and more efficient with your time, doing things that give you energy and doing things that build a business. So these are clues that people leave. The ability to, if you want to sell something, you need to have an offer that's so good that other people feel stupid for saying no to it. Like what Alex Hormozy says. You're going to see when you talk to a lot of these people who are hyper successful, like my friends Brandon McElroy and Weston Corca, they make $10 million a month on TikTok ads. My friends Kevin Pern and my friend Daniel, the guys who own V-Shreds, those guys make, so Nick Daniels and Kevin Pern, those guys make maybe $25 million a month from selling concepts on V-Shreds. When I talk to my friend Lynn Oding, he's a successful Hollywood producer and director. When I talk to my friend, I know Pascal Mawad, who owns Mawad Jewelries. I know Peter Sosluski, who owns Wish. Several of these guys, when they get into the $100 million range, my friend, the guy who created Full House, Jeff Franklin, is a good buddy of mine. And this guy's worth a lot of money. How did he get to that point? Because he was able to solve a problem. And what you'll see with all these guys is you'll see a very common thread with all of them, where they understood the scalability and the concept of solving a problem. And that's how they became outrageously wealthy. That's what I mean by success leaves clues. You'll notice a lot of crossover when you read about Elon Musk and when you read about Steve Jobs, because success leaves clues. And when you get to the highest levels, you're going to notice that there's a lot of crossover with a lot of people as far as how they were able to be successful. Now, when you take that same concept, success leaves clues, with dating, one of the things I did, say, going back to all the way back to 2008, is I stopped listening to what pickup artists and dating coaches were telling me, and I started watching guys who actually had massive amounts of success with women, and I started to notice they're also doing the same things with each other. And the thing that they're doing is, it's really funny. If you ever read Oren Klaff's book, Pitch Anything, he talks about eliminate neediness and avoid beta behavior. Those are dating techniques, but he's using it in order to sell a product. And what you'll find is that the highest levels of sales and the highest levels of networking, the highest levels of dating, they're the same pieces of advice that you get for both. Again, success leaves clues. So I would only pay attention to guys that I saw having success with women, and I stopped paying less attention to what dating coaches and pickup artists told me, and I started having way more success myself. So that's what you do. You, over time, just consider being a scout, like for a sports team. You start seeing the most talented players, the Lionel Messi or the Luka Doncic, and you start saying, okay, what did these guys look like when they were 13, 14, 15 years old? And you make an avatar in your mind of what that was like. Then when you go out and you scout other players, you're like, oh, he's got the same traits that Michael Jordan had when he was in college. He's got the same traits that Luka Doncic had when he was playing for Real Madrid. Like, you start to see those things, and then because success leaves clues, it's like, okay, that's the guy I want to take first in the draft. That's the guy I want to come work for me. Oh, I see. These are my 3 top sales guys, and they have these personality traits, and you start to mimic those personality traits, which makes you even more efficient and more successful over time.
It's time for a quick break. There are millions of potential products to buy, so how do you know which ones are worth your hard-earned money? Simple. You go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and explore those that will transform and improve your life. You'll find deals, listener exclusives, and special offers with some great companies. Recommendations are 100% honest and only on items Ian has tried or believes in. The companies showcased will make you a better man in all areas of your life. Simply go to nextlevelguy.com/affiliates and level up.
So how would you start going about that? Because you're an avid reader. You've got a great book list on your website. And it's every time I've listened to an interview you've done recently, I've been writing out the books. I've got some through there, and I'm sort of keen to start utilizing them. And then you've got the guys that you're seeing, you're following the clues to success. How do we start incorporating these into ourselves and staying congruent and true to who we are without losing our integrity? How do we not act as if, but actually absorb the good and throw it and get rid of the rest? I think it was Bruce Lee.
Sure. When you are introverted and you act extroverted, you're not losing your integrity. This is a big problem. When people, losing integrity means you're lying. To me, it means you're being dishonest. Like, for instance, if you don't work heavy with animal rescue, but all of a sudden you help an animal rescue, you're not losing your integrity. because that's might not be your main mission. You're still helping the world, so it's okay. And so, for instance, one of the things I see often is guys, I have a lot of clients who are introverted, and I teach them how to project louder, and so they sound extroverted. In their mind, they're like, oh, this isn't who I am. I feel try hard for doing this. It's like, well, no, that's not integrity. Being louder is not a function of integrity. Improving your social media is not a function of integrity. So a lot of people are like, this doesn't feel authentic. It's like, well, improvement, if you aren't successful and I give you a technique to become successful, it's always going to feel weird. It's always going to feel inauthentic. I wouldn't worry about a lack of inauthenticity. I would worry about a lack of integrity. I do not lie, cheat, or steal, nor do I tolerate anyone who does in our company. And so that's what integrity means. But me improving, like, so for instance, let's just say I was overweight and I put on 20 pounds of muscle and and my BMI went down and my waist got smaller. Am I being myself? Am I being authentic? The reality is, dude, I'm not being myself. I'm actually not being authentic. But who I was before was overweight, and now I've lost a bunch of weight. I've changed. And in that change, I've improved, but I haven't lost my integrity. And so that's where people, a lot of times you'll be like, hey, man, this is what I need you to post on social media. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to do it. It feels try hard, or it feels inauthentic. And I'm like, no, it's not inauthentic. It's not try hard. You're improving. That's what's happening. And so you have to understand the difference between the two things. A lot of times, again, if you've ever gone to a personal trainer, that first day when you get back from the personal trainer, you're so sore because he worked out muscles and parts of your body that you haven't worked out on your own. Do you feel inauthentic? No, you're improving. You're actually improving. But you may make the excuse in your mind as a coping mechanism. You may say, oh, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. No, this is improving. Improving is not about authenticity. Improving is about integrity. Do you have the integrity to continue to work harder to improve yourself? Because that's, to me, happiness comes on the journey. And the journey of self-improvement is such an incredible journey. There's so many clients that I have that are starting from zero. And I'm actually jealous of them because the dopamine hits they're going to get from these massive improvements in their life, I can't go back and do those again because I've already done them. I've already leveled up past that point. And watching them do it just makes me so happy for them to be able to improve. So that's a big thing that a lot of people have is like when you get people to become better public speakers, they're like, this doesn't feel right. This doesn't feel authentic. Becoming a better public speaker does not impugn your integrity. What it does is it doesn't feel authentic for you because you have your authenticity or the person you are inside is not successful and you want to stick to that person. My whole thing in MOA is we get rid of that person. The only thing that matters is like you not being successful in general has to do with you not working smarter, meaning you haven't received the correct guidance. And it also has to do with the stories that you're telling yourself. You're telling yourself that there's a matrix that's after you that keeps you from being successful. And like when you even when you listen to Andrew Tate, he's like, I'm aware there's a matrix, but I'm not mad about it. I just understand that there's rules and I need to follow the rules. If I follow not the rules, but if I understand the mechanisms of the matrix, I can become incredibly rich. And that's the reality situation is. Like the world is hard. A woman rejects you. Let me tell you something. Women's selectivity sucks when you have low status and a woman rejects you. Women's selectivity doesn't suck when you're married and you have a child and you don't want your wife going off with some other guy. Women's selectivity is awesome when you have a family. Women's selectivity sucks when you're in college, right? So that's the difference. And you'll start to understand it's not that the game is unfair, or maybe it is unfair. You don't want the game to be easier. You want to be better. You just want to hope to be better. But a lot of times, me giving you those things, you have to change your diet. Well, I don't want to change my diet because it doesn't feel authentic. No, changing your diet, you're improving your health, okay? And when in doing so, you're maintaining integrity, but it won't feel authentic. Make sense?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I love the way that you put that. I'm going to be using that from now on because I've had this argument over and over with people saying, oh, I can't do that because it's not who I am. And you're like, well, you're not. You've got to go out and try something different to become a different version of yourself.
Yeah.
If you do the same thing you've done, it was like Albert Einstein doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different result is the definition of insanity.
So Neil Armstrong wasn't the first guy who landed on the moon until he was. It's like it's not who I am as a person. Who you are as a person. Like I wasn't a captain in the Air Force until I was a captain. Like who you are as a person is constantly morphing and changing, and hopefully it's improving. And so who you feel like you are when you're 18 should not who you feel like you are when you're 26. So 18, you just get out of, you start at university. And then when you're 26, maybe you finish your master's degree or you're working on a PhD. You're a different person then. And so you need to appreciate and accept the fact that you're going to constantly be changing. And in that change, you hope that change is improvement. And in that improvement, things that are not going to feel authentic in the beginning will feel authentic later on. And then there'll be new changes that happen after that. But integrity is something different. Integrity has to do with lying, stealing, and cheating other people. That's something different than me making you talk loud when you don't want to talk loud. That's not a function of integrity. That's not who you are. You can always improve in those areas.
Because that's I love about you're always straight to the point. You give it as it needs. You don't kind of sugarcoat it. You don't follow the what's expected of today's society. Was that why you created the podcast? Do you think that you needed to have these conversations to give people, because you're very intellectually curious, that you want to have the hard conversations, but you want to learn and grow as a person and obviously help your clients. But was that the inspiration behind the podcast, or was it a moment that you felt like you needed to get your voice out there?
Yeah, there was the moment. It's like a lot of people are surprised when I explain what happened. There was a girl who I used to date, and she just started lying to me about a bunch of shit. And actually, at first, I didn't care, but she cost me a job. And I remember the whole thing with Joe Rogan. You remember when he got impugned on social media for saying the N-word? And he was saying it to he was saying it because he was quoting Paul Mooney at the time. But because Joe Rogan had done these 3-hour podcasts, you couldn't take him out of context. And all these black comedians came to his defense. All these black comedians came to his defense. And the reason they came to his defense is because they understood authentically who he was as a person. And I realized that you could take me out of context if you wanted to, but if I did a 2 or 3 hour podcast, you could no longer take me out of context anymore. And so that's why I started the context. I started the context because I was never going to let there be a narrative about me that wasn't controlled by me. And you'll see that, like, even when people, there's one guy in particular, he's got a lot of problems internally, but he makes a different video about me like once every week or something like that. And the thing is, those videos, and I'm sure he probably doesn't even realize this, every time he makes one of those videos, I get more clients, because what happens is he tries to take me out of context, which causes people to then go look at my brand. And when they do, and they can see me in context, they start to quickly see that he's lying, and it actually gets me a lot more clients.
Because when I said, like, I was interviewing you, I think somebody said, he's friends with the Tates. And I was like, and what does that mean? It doesn't say anything about him as a person. They were immediately, he's interviewed Sterling Cooper. And it's like, well, so have I.
Yeah.
But your friend, it was that logic of like, must be bad because I've been told it's bad. And I was like, well, that makes no sense. You can't judge somebody on something that you've heard or something that someone else has said, and we're so quick to do that on social media nowadays. And
well, how about this? You just made the quote with Bruce Lee. Take the good and not the bad. I don't think Andrew's guilty. I don't think Andrew Tate's guilty. But regardless of whether or not he's guilty, if you think that you're so good at public speaking that you couldn't learn something from listening to Andrew Tate, you're a moron. No one listening to this is as good at public speaking as Andrew Tate. So if you don't think you can take lessons from that, and I do all the time, like I pay very close attention to like the meta information that he's, or the subtle pieces of inference that he puts in his communication. I pay very close attention to what he does because I like to study people who are successful. And as a public speaker, as a communicator, Andrew Tate got more famous faster than anyone maybe in the history of the world. No one got more famous faster than he did because of his ability to communicate ideas. And so even if you disagree with his ideas, you should be able to study. Like, for instance, I was in the U.S. military. We studied Robert E. Lee and Erwin Rommel, but both of those people were horrible racists. I can recognize they were racist, and at the same time recognize that they were both fantastic military commanders. So it's like what you said with Bruce Lee thing. You take the pieces that work, and then you leave the rest behind. I have some friends of mine that are magnificently successful, but they cheat on their wives, and they have horrible like drug problems. I want to learn the successful part, but I don't want to cheat on my wife or have the drug problem. You can still do those things. You can separate the art from the artist.
Well, that's my argument from the start, was that you can learn something from everybody, but there's always bits you want to say, keep keep that, throw away. I wouldn't want to do that. And that's the sad thing about it, is people are now so kind of in this camp or that camp. We're not willing to actually sit and speak to people. So do you think then that that's the biggest problem with guys now? We follow on social media that we consume rather than create. We're not willing to have the difficult conversations, to go and do the charity work, to help whatever mission is in our statement. Do you think we need to have our own kind of great war, or to have a mission in life to kind of to do now? Is there's no longer that ritual from boyhood to manhood? We need to kind of find.
If you're just talking about men in general, would it be better for them if they had some massive struggle that helped them improve? Yes. The part that we have to remember was what I just said before, which is life. The whole goal, a lot of times when people come up with things like, electric drivetrains or satellite dishes or fiber optic communication or things like antibiotics, when they came up with these ideas, they did so because they wanted to end in some way. They wanted to end human suffering, which is, in the long scheme of things, is kind of like the ultimate goal for most technologies, is to end some sort of suffering. So in doing so, as you keep making technologies that keep ending more and more suffering, the motivation to try to overcome certain things gets less and less. Like, again, for me, when you make a certain amount of money, you don't even mow your own lawn anymore, right? You get to a point where it's like, you eventually you're so busy and you make so much money because you get good at your job that you hire someone to do your dry cleaning and clean your car. Like you get to the point where now all of a sudden these struggles that you had before, a lot of them just go away. For some people, not for everyone, but the idea of living in an air-conditioned home is something that, our ancestors 50 years ago, 100 years ago, a lot of people didn't have air conditioning. And so when you come to those realizations, the question you ask is, what do men need to be better? And my answer is, there's 8 billion people on the planet. There's no selection pressure anymore. Better or worse, there's still going to be billions and billions of people on the planet. Men in general, I can't answer that question. I've never tried to create a movement. Rollo, my co-host, he's trying to create more of a movement. I'm trying to create more of the Navy SEALs, the Delta Force, right? The British SAS. I'm trying to create the Green Berets. I'm trying to create a small group of men. I'm not trying to steer the Titanic away from the iceberg, but I am putting you on the in the lifeboat. I am the lifeboat. I'm trying to pick a small group of men who want to make that change. And here's the ultimate irony, is that as the world continues to give more and more bad advice to men about they're not being vulnerable enough, as the world continues to give more and more bad advice, then my advice in contrary to that becomes more and more effective. Does that make sense? If I'm the only guy who knows how to maintain masculine boundaries and knows how to talk to women to make them laugh in a room full of guys who've been taught to become more vulnerable and don't know how to have face-to-face communication with women, not only am I attractive, I become more attractive in comparison to them. And so that's what's happened, is my clients even have more success because in comparison to the way other men are taught through big tech, the media, their church, and their family, they're consistently taught bad advice about being showing way too much interest to women early on. As long as they continue to get that bad advice over and over again, then me, in contrast to them, is going to look better and better. I have a friend of mine. He's like, there's this thing called the gold pill, the Christ pill. So he's not red pill, he's not black pill, he's not purple pill, he's not pink pill. He's the Christ pill. He's the gold pill. And one of the things he says is, he goes, I'm going to teach my kids to eat right, to read a ton of books, to play sports, to say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. He goes, my kids are going to look like fucking superheroes compared to kids 20 years from now. And that's the truth. So if you're hearing this and you're like, Michael, how do we change the world? I don't know how to change the world. I can keep putting my message out on social media, but a lot of people don't really care. Like I don't have millions of subs, and I never will, because my message is about improvement. Improvement is a very boring subject. Male improvement is a boring subject. Talking about men being a victim is a very exciting subject. And so people who talk about the victimization of men, they will grow much faster than I will. But male improvement is a boring subject. Going step by step and doing the work is a boring subject. Speed of implementation, suspension of disbelief, determination and obsession. These are boring subjects in general. So that's the reason why my channel is never going to explode in growth, because I teach you the step by step incremental 10,000 hour way to become improved. And so a lot of people aren't going to like that. But if that's what you're into, then when you learn those skills, you're going to look like a superhero in comparison to this younger generation that just lies. I don't know how else to say it, but they're just liars. They rent the Lambo, they buy the fake watch, they tell you they're successful when they're not. They take pictures on jets to try to make it look like they have a private jet. They're just like, they're constantly like, and you'll see the same thing. Women who are getting their trips paid to go to Ibiza, to go to Monaco, to go to Burning Man, to go to Art Basel, to go to, whatever, to go to Coachella. And really they have a sugar daddy who's paying for them, making other people believe that they paid for it themselves. Those kind of things, people stealing from their investors, people running Bitcoin scams, crypto scams, Forex scams. That's what I'm seeing this newer generation. They seem to be obsessed with getting as much status and clout as they can without working for it. And so my clients look like fucking superheroes compared to those people, because we have integrity and we actually take the time to read the books. Like, consider, I ask my clients, every one of my clients, to read 30 books in 1 year, this collection of 30 books that will change their life. Most of the people that you see on there that are running Facebook ads, they've not read 30 books in their whole life. I'm asking you to read 30 books in a year. I'm asking you to put in some level of work. So again, when you get to that end goal and you've done the work, you're going to look like a superhero compared to these other people.
Because that's the thing. If you said improvement, people go, nah, it sounds like work. But victimization, that gives them an excuse to stay where they are. That's a justification to say, well, I'm being held down by this guy. It's like you're saying, it's holding that story that lets them stay where they are. And could you then use the concept? I know you talk about the local celebrity in your coaching. Could I then use that concept, the local celebrity of the podcast, to kind of facilitate that movement to find my tribe of guys that want to do that?
It's interesting because you brought up local celebrity, and that is in our marketing. What local celebrity means is like, so let's just say really famous people would be like The Rock, Justin Bieber, like Justin Timberlake, like really famous people that are way up here. Kim Kardashian, they're like 10 out of 10 famous. And then down at the bottom is like the janitor at the school. He's 0 out of 10 famous, right? He doesn't have any social media, whatever. I want you to get to like a 2 or a 3. Like, there's this mid-tier level of fame that didn't exist 25 years ago. You were either like Tom Cruise or you were nobody, right? And there's this way to be famous at like a 5 that didn't exist anymore because of social media. So that would be like Aiden Ross or Patrick Bet-David. These are guys that are like famous in certain circles, but they're not incredibly famous, right? Mm-hmm. Drake is like super famous to a lot of people, but there's like this mid-tier level of fame. You're like a backup point guard in the NBA, or you're a streamer, or you're like a goalie on a soccer team or something like that. There's this mid-tier level of fame. Just below that is what I would consider local celebrity. So local celebrity means this. When you go out in Glasgow, every single restaurant owner knows your face. Every pretty girl in Glasgow has at least seen your face on social media, but just in your like local area. And when you throw events or even your birthday party in Glasgow, the girls are like, I can't miss Ian's event. I can't miss going. I have to go to that event. That's how I am in Vegas. When I have my birthday party, girls will fly in from out of town because they want to be seen at my birthday. It's not because I'm dating them. They just know Michael Sartain's birthday is an event and I want to be seen there. So they're going to fly from out of town. So that's what I've achieved, is what's called local celebrity status. And I would say you're a 2, a 3, or a 4 in that area. You're not quite a 5. 5s are like legitimately famous, and you're nowhere near a 10. 10 is like the president of the United States. You're just like a 2, a 3, or a 4. And what I try to teach guys, local celebrity ability, is to get to that 2, 3, 4. Having a panel show, right? A great way to become a 2, or 3, or 4, like local celebrity, is have a panel show, do man on the street videos, do reaction videos, have a podcast. Those are great ways to do it. Or just have really cool photos, be out on a regular basis in like really cool social situations, and have a ton of super hot female friends that introduce you to other females. That's how you become a local celebrity.
So what is then the sort of golden rules of being social? Like, to get to that level, once we've started working on ourselves, how do we keep doing this? But because, and yeah, we can have better like social media flows and stuff like that. But how do we, is there rules on being social, regardless if you're networking, dating, just connecting or just being nice? Because I was always taught to speak to the janitor as you would speak to the CEO, chat to everybody, the cashier, how's your day going, etc. What's the golden rules of being social and being the sort of the linchpin of the event for you?
If I could make it as simple as possible, it's treat them all the same and make them talk about themselves. So treat everyone the same and make them talk about themselves. Something that impresses women a lot is like if they're in a group and then there's a girl in the group who's clearly not as attractive, or even like, let's say a girl you think is really pretty, but she brings her mom out. When you can talk to her mom the same way you talk to her, or you talk to the guys in the group the same way you talk to the girls in the group. I've had really attractive women tell me before, it's like, that was the thing that impressed me about you, is that you were talking to everyone in the group the same. Treat them all the same, make them talk about themselves. Making people talk about themselves is really important. The thing I will tell you, when you're trying to network with a tribe of very, very successful men, speak the language of problem solving. So the reason why a lot of my friends who are very, very successful, the reason why we're friends is because I'm constantly trying to help them solve problems and I'm constantly trying to be useful. When I'm dealing with my guy friends. With ladies, what I'll do is I get them to qualify to me and I don't qualify to them. And I'm constantly showing like strong masculine boundaries, and I'm generating attraction through pre-selection, relevancy, competency, access to scarce resources, showing high social status and social proof. I'm generating attraction those ways. And at the same time, those same women that I'm talking about, I'm friend zoning them. I'm putting them in the friend zone. I'm showing that I have little to no intent. And if they want to date me, they're going to be the ones that they're going to have to chase. So that would be the small keys to what I would express. Women know when they go out with me. I've had tons of women say this. And these are some of the women I would end up dating. I've said this before. It's like when I first met Michael, it's like I felt safe. He wasn't hitting on me. When there was creepy guys around, I felt like Michael was like a safe place to go. And then over time, what happens is the girl starts asking the question. It's like all these other girls seem to like Michael. They seem to be attracted to Michael. And Michael gives them attention. Why doesn't he give me the attention that he gives them? And then it goes further and further. And it's like, I'm going to get Michael's attention no matter what. And this is a girl I put in the friend zone. Women are then competing for my attention, which obviously automatically generates attraction. This won't make any sense to you until you've actually gone out to a nightclub with 25, 30 girls. Then you'll start to see they compete for your attention. And then you're not gaming anymore. There's no cold approach. Women are actually competing for you. And so that's essentially what I teach. And the way you do that is by friend zoning a ton of girls. It's by getting the girls to talk about themselves, by treating them all the same. And then again, with guys, the main thing I do is I get guys to talk about themselves, and I'm always in the business of problem solving.
So do you think then that we've misunderstood connection, because you're a big fan of evolutionary, psychology. Do we not understand really what draws attraction, what draws in connection? And we're so busy trying to prove ourselves that we've forgotten actually how to do it because we're so up our own arses, basically.
We forgot how to connect. No, we forgot how to connect when the cell phone came out. The smartphone is the reason why humans can't connect anymore. I mean, there's a singular reason. The reason why there's a dating crisis is because of social media, and the reason why humans have lost the ability to shake hands and look at each other in the eye and have direct communication is because of the smartphone.
Because it
just made things way too virtual, too easy.
Well, you do some amazing charity work. You raise so much money and you help so many charities and stuff, and you give back so much. And I remember hearing an interview you did where you said about how you make every single person feel like they're the star. They are the best thing about the event. Can you go into a little bit about the sort of charity work that you do, and how do you kind of create this version of yourself that can actually go out there? Because are you able to just be you out there? How can somebody turn it on that's maybe kind of always been a bit reserved, but is looking to do that in their own life?
So for me, because of over the years of like having so many bikini competitions, so many charity events, going to so many, destination photo shoots, having so many parties, comp tables, comp dinners, living in Vegas, there's this group of women that I've become friends with. There's 100, like we're talking 700-800 women. And one of the things that these women have is a superpower. Their superpower is they can get people to look at them on social media. It's mostly, yes, because they're physically attractive. And my friend, Steve Fowler, he didn't come up with the idea of, I think he came up with the idea of using social media with this, but the idea of using girls that were like playmates in order to focus attention on things like animal rescue, focus on things like troops overseas, focus on things like collecting toys for children on Christmas, focus on things like maybe ALS, cancer, whatever it is, domestic abuse. When he would use the superpower that women had of garnering attention, and he would use that superpower in order to do good, in order to raise money for charity. So that's the ethos. That's the basis of where we got the idea in order to do it. For me, I'm a unique example. I'm not a good example of this. I was never introverted. I was always extroverted, and I like talking to people. Talking to people in groups, I don't feel any anxiety. I actually feel more anxiety talking to people one-on-one than I do talking to people in groups. Getting on stage and talking in front of 1,500 people, I feel like I'm home. I feel like very, very comfortable, in part because my speaking voice gets lower, and I feel like my voice is a shield that protects me from any kind of criticism or taking any kind of damage. I use my voice almost like a shield, if that makes any sense. It's a force field that protects me. So for me to turn it on, turn it off. The other thing is, if you've ever hung out with me and talked to me, you'll see that the guy who does the interviews on the red carpet is very similar to the guy who you meet when you talk to. It's like one, authentic like situation all the time. So I think that's probably the easiest way for me to explain it. Is like, I love talking. I've changed in my mind public speaking into something that's very, very positive.
So is there a way that you can, if you weren't, say, that person, or you were kind of getting into that, how would you kind of turn it on? Is there a practice that you get guys like Tim Ferriss used to have? You go out and lie down on the ground to get over that kind of worry about what people are thinking about you, or the social anxiety.
Yeah.
Is there something that you would work with a client who kind of maybe came to you and said, I'm terrified of being that social animal?
The thing is, with the techniques, I've seen these ones where you lay down on the ground and you start barking at people, stuff like that. The problem with that is that it while it does get you over worrying about what other people think, it also kind of doesn't calibrate you. Like, you still need to be calibrated while you also at the same time don't have the anxiety of worrying about what other people think. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. So you want to calibrate yourself. So I recommend, if you're going to do the thing where you lay down in the street, do it once. Like, you don't have to do it over and over again. What's more important though is having gratitude, and then also coming to the realization. I remember I used to go out in Las Vegas when I first moved here, and I would see these guys that were up at these dance floor tables, or the promoters or hosts or whatever, and they always had like this stoic look on their face. And I was like, man, those guys have all the answers. Those guys are living a great life. And then later on, when I started throwing events at those same clubs, those guys would come up to me and ask me questions. And then I came to the realization, oh, they're just as insecure as I am. They're all going through the same thing. When you come to that realization that the people who are criticizing you are just as insecure as you are, then it's like you can lose that sense of judgment. I just don't worry about people projecting their own insecurities on me. I used to get mad about it. I used to like respond to every comment. And now I was like, oh, I understand you've had a really rough day. This is something that you're going through, et cetera, whatever. And you made a personal attack. Justin Waller has like this incredible comeback where he goes, hey man, I saw that you left a mean comment on there. I just want to let you know that I'm pulling for you, and I just hope everything works out for you in whatever it is that you're dealing with. Bro, it is so, you think that that's an infantilizing, but the thing is, you've hit on a core problem. Nobody's going to leave comments about you on YouTube unless they're going through some kind of internal pain. And so learning that was probably the key issue to improving that part of my life.
Because that's what I used to do. I would sit there and say, oh, such and such, I really hate them. And then I would turn around and go, okay, I wish them the best. I hope they're doing really well. And just being positive about somebody you were annoyed at, it deflated everything. And you couldn't be upset or angry against them. You're kind of like, okay. And then you just moved on. Because I used to ruminate and OCD and stress about stuff. And now it's just like, wish them the best, move on. And I'm still fallible and still fail every so often, but it really helps. So how do we make this a system then? As we start becoming more social, as we start going out, as we read the books, start working ourselves, and how do you avoid taking the easy wins? When you start seeing girls falling for you a bit more, or you start becoming more social, how do we get guys to keep improving? How do they find, I don't know, how do they have to have a mission? Do they have to have an overall goal, a kind of focus in their life? How do we avoid them staying in the shallow end and actually swimming out for the real prizes?
How do we avoid? For me, there's three things that I do in order to maintain the mindset that I have. Number one is gratitude, like we've mentioned before. Like, we live in after the time of antibiotics, and we all have electricity and running water in our house. Number two is the complete and total acceptance of the present moment. I accept and I surrender to the present moment awareness. You can read Eckhart Tolle about this, but it really is where you can be yourself the most. I am the quickest and most charismatic and the smartest when I'm totally in the present moment. And then the last part is the complete and total resignation to the understanding that you're going to die. None of this is permanent. You and everyone is going to die. Everyone you've ever been jealous of and everyone that has ever been jealous of you will be dead in 100 years. And you understand the finality of it. It frees you. It liberates you in order to take action. So that's what I would recommend for guys. And most people you're referring to have lost those three understandings.
Have you ever seen that Memento Mori? It's
Memento Mori. That's the third one that I was talking about.
The sheet where it shows you the little squares, and every week you shed one off, and you work out from the day that you're, roughly, I think it's 80 years, and each week the passes you shed off a part of your life, and you realize how little you have left of life once you're 30, 40, and it is scary. It's terrifying. What would you want somebody to take from this? Because we've kind of gone around a lot of topics. I'd love to have you on and go into sort of different areas, but what would you want people to take from this as a kind of an understanding or a statement of intent to live their life with?
Yeah, I would recommend that if you're listening to this, understand the concept of working smarter, not harder, that the goals that you want to achieve, someone has accomplished those goals before. And if you can follow those people like a signpost, you can get to your accomplishments, you can get to your goals faster. One of the examples I love is from the creation of the mile until the time that Roger Bannister crossed the 4-minute mile was 2,000 years. And the next guy to break the 4-minute mile was 43 days because someone saw someone do it, then other people were willing to do it. Success leaves clues. If you want to find those clues, just understand what my program is we've delineated all those clues from all those great thinkers into one course. And that course, combined with all the experiences that my 1,600 clients have had and that I've had, we put all those things in there. And I basically took 25 years, my last 25 years of knowledge, and I put it into one course that you can get through in probably about 6 months. And so that's the main thing that I want to leave people with.
And what would you get from somebody signing up for the Men of Action program just now? If they came to you after an event or they needed to change their life after listening to this, what would they get from the program and why should they sign up?
What they're going to get is trying to understand the highest level of communication, networking, leadership, and dating, if that's what they're looking for. Those are the things that are most important. Those are the things that we teach other people. And then understanding how these things function from an evolutionary perspective. So understanding concepts in evolutionary psychology. And then, there's very, very actionable thing. We're in what I like to consider the worst part of self-improvement. The best part of self-improvement or the easiest part of self-improvement to teach is mindset. We don't teach mindset. We teach you how to take action. And when you take these actions are what cause you to become a more improved, wholesome, a more holistically improved human being is by taking these actions. So we teach you this through social networking, high status networking. We teach you event planning, evolutionary psychology. We teach you leadership, entrepreneurship. We teach you a winning mindset, and we teach you critical thinking. These are actually the names of the pillars in Men of Action. So we go over those things. And at the end, each person takes a different thing away from it, but I've never had someone complete the course not tell me, thank you, this was probably the most life-changing course I've ever taken.
Well, I'd love to have you back on and to do another one and really kind of go into each of the areas. But until then, how can people find you? How can we follow along this journey and become part of this movement?
Yeah, the easiest way is to go to Michael Sartain on Instagram. Just write me, leave me a note, and I'll give you access to our free school group. You can go in there. I think there's 4,400 guys in there right now. And in there, they'll have a schedule of all the events that we do, the in real life events, the virtual events that we have going on. And there's tons of resources. There's 200 testimonials in there. There's Instagram testimonials, so you can see what your IG should look like. The book list is in there. There's just tons of great information. And there's a free course that's in there as well. If you're interested in actually joining Men of Action, you want to learn more, then go to MOA Mentoring. So for Men of Action, MOAmentoring.com. You'll pop up. You'll see there's a video on there that kind of describes what the course is. You can watch the video and then decide if this is what you want to do.
Well, that's it for another week. And thank you for listening. It's now time to take what you've learned and use it to develop and enhance your life with the key points mentioned. Listen, try it, embrace it, use it, and crush it. Now's your time to hit that next level in your life. If you liked this episode, then please leave a comment on the show notes or a review of the show on your podcast platform. Everything helps evolve the show. Until next week, keep seeking the next level in your life.